In her second year of high school, Tia started dating Ryan. He was the star on the soccer team with a winning smile and a friendly charm that lit up any room. To 16-year-old Tia, he seemed like the only one who truly understood her. Someone who looked beyond her quiet nature to the big dreams she kept hidden away. After school, they'd spend hours talking about their future plans, moving out together, renting a small apartment in an exciting part of town, maybe even launching a business side by side. Tia could already imagine a life built together, unstoppable in every way. But everything changed after graduation. Caps had hit the ground, summer melted into fall, and Ryan started drifting away like the tide pulling from the shore. Texts went unanswered for hours, even days, and their usual park strolls dwindled until they nearly stopped altogether. Whenever they met, Ryan steered every conversation toward his own ambitions. How he needed to ace his college entrance exams, how he had his sights set on top schools like Georgetown or Stanford. One cool October afternoon, as the leaves turned bright gold and red, he abruptly stopped on a gravel path lined with old oak trees. "Tia, we need to talk," he said flatly, his hands buried in his jacket pockets. Tia's stomach tightened with worry. "Is something wrong?" she asked, brushing a loose strand of her dark hair from her eyes as she tried to read his expression. Ryan kicked a small stone, his gaze fixed on the ground. "Look, it's just that our relationship isn't working for me anymore. I have big plans. I'm applying to colleges, chasing a career," he explained with a vague gesture between them, avoiding her eyes as he added, "It's holding me back." The words hit her like a jagged knife. "Holding you back?" Tia repeated, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to sound steady. "I thought we were in this together. You promised we'd figure everything out. College, life, all of it." Finally, Ryan looked up, his hazel eyes distant and determined. "I'm really sorry, Tia. I've made up my mind. It's best for both of us if we end this." His tone left no room for debate, like a door slamming shut. Tia stood frozen as he turned and walked away, his familiar blue jacket shrinking with every step, never looking back. The cool autumn wind tugged at her scarf, but she barely noticed. A deep ache spread in her chest, a hollow hurt that slowly consumed her. How could he simply toss aside everything they had dreamed of together, as if it were nothing more than extra baggage he didn't need? For a long time, Tia just stayed there, watching the empty trail, the sound of crunching leaves fading into silence, her heart shattered into scattered pieces. Soon after, her struggles only worsened. A few weeks after Ryan disappeared from her life, Tia's world took another crushing blow. The warning signs had been building up, missed periods, a queasy feeling at the smell of coffee. One day, she sneaked out to a nearby drugstore, grabbed a pregnancy test, and locked herself in an upstairs bathroom, her heart pounding as she waited. Later, she sat at the worn kitchen table in her family's neat suburban home, hands trembling as she clutched the test. 2 pink lines glared back at her, a neon sign of a truth she couldn't ignore. "Tia, dinner's ready. Come on, it's getting cold," her mom called brightly from the kitchen over the clatter of dishes. Tia shoved the test into her sweatshirt pocket, its plastic digging into her palm, and dragged herself to the dining room, each step feeling heavier than the last. The aroma of meatloaf and gravy filled the room, a familiar Tuesday routine. Her dad sat at the head of the table, glasses slipping down his nose as he scanned the local newspaper, while her mom bustled in with an apron dusted with flour, balancing a casserole dish and a bowl of mashed potatoes. "Tia, I need to talk to you," she mumbled near her chair, her voice thin and shaky. Her dad rustled the newspaper and peered at her over the rims of his glasses. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Her mom paused mid-scoop, the serving spoon suspended with gravy dripping onto the tablecloth. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" she asked, her tone tightening as she looked at Tia's pale face. Tia's chest tightened and her breath caught. "I'm pregnant," she managed to choke out. the words shattering the air. Silence fell like a heavy weight. The spoon clattered to the floor, splattering gravy everywhere. Her mom's hand flew to her throat in shock, and her dad's face turned from pink to a boiling red, veins standing out on his temples. The newspaper hit the table with a sharp smack. "Pregnant?" her mom shrieked, fumbling for a napkin and twisting it into knots. "Tia Marie, you've brought disgrace on us. How could you be so foolish, so reckless? What will people say?" "Hold on, Linda," her dad interjected in a low, dangerous tone, shoving his chair back so hard it screeched. He loomed over them, fists clenched. "You've ruined your life, and ours. Who's the father?" "It's that kid, Ryan. The one who was always around," Tia stammered, tears stinging her eyes. "It's complicated. He's gone now, Dad, but I can handle this. I promise I'll figure it out." Her mom's voice shot up nearly hysterical. "You're 17. You think you can just deal with a baby? What about school? What about us? The neighbors will gossip. The church will talk." "I didn't choose this," Tia fired back, gripping the table's edge as her voice cracked. "You think I wanted this. I'm scared too, but I'm not running away." Her dad's bitter laugh filled the room, harsh and unforgiving. "You should be scared. You have no idea what you've done." He jabbed a finger at her, his eyes blazing. "This isn't a small mistake you can apologize for. You're not. Raising a child under my roof, end of story." "Don't," her mom tried to say, but he turned sharply on her. "Stop pampering her. She's tossed everything we gave her right back at us." Facing Tia again, his voice was as hard as steel. "If you want to act grown up, go handle it somewhere else. Get out." Tia's tears streamed down her face. "You're kicking me out just like that. I'm still your daughter." "Not now," he growled, stomping toward the living room, his footsteps shaking the floor. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." Tia stumbled back to her room, the weight of her parents' rejection sinking into her like a stone, dragging her under. His harsh words echoed relentlessly in her mind, while her mom's muffled sobs drifted up from downstairs. Tia grabbed her old duffel bag from under her bed, shaking as she stuffed in a few sweaters, her favorite pair of jeans, and the little notebook where she had once written her dreams, now feeling like cruel reminders. Every creak of the floorboards seemed to shout failure. Every glow of the stars on her ceiling stabbed at her with grief for the girl she used to be. Fear gripped her chest, fear of the unknown, fear of the tiny life growing inside her, fear of being completely alone. But she swallowed it down. Zipping the bag shut with a final act of defiance, she paused at her desk, grabbing a framed photo of herself and Ryan from last summer, both of them laughing at a county fair. For a moment, she almost hurled it against the wall, but instead, she slipped it into the side pocket of the bag as a bitter reminder of the cost of trust. Downstairs, the dining room resembled a silent graveyard of untouched food, the meatloaf slowly congealing in its dish. Her mom sat slumped at the table, sniffling into a napkin, while her dad's absence roared louder than his earlier shouts. He had barricaded himself in the garage, no doubt. Tia lingered in the doorway, her throat tight. "I'm leaving," she said in a hoarse but steady voice, the strap of her bag biting into her shoulder. Her mom's head snapped up, eyes red and puffy. "Tia, wait, please, just think about this. Where will you even go? Does it matter?" "You heard Dad. I'm not welcome here. You're twisting this," Tia shot back, her pain spilling over. Her mom cried, standing so fast that her chair wobbled. "We're upset, yes, but running off isn't the answer. What about school? What about... I'm upset because you called me a disgrace, and Dad told me to get out. What am I supposed to do? Just pretend this never happened?" Her mom opened her mouth, then closed it again, clutching the table as if it were her only support. "We just need time," she whispered almost to herself. "Time's up," Tia declared, turning away before her determination could falter. She grabbed her coat from the hook by the door, the familiar weight offering a small comfort. and stepped out onto the front porch. The January air hit her like a slap, sharp and cold, stinging her cheeks and seeping through her shoes. Snow lightly covered the lawn, and the streetlights cast a pale glow over the quiet curb. Standing there with her breath fogging in the darkness, the duffel bag tugging at her arm, reality crashed in. She had nowhere to go, no Ryan, no home, no plan, except for one place, Grandma Nina's. Her father's mom lived 2 hours away, in Oakwood, in a small brick house with a sagging porch and a garden that bloomed even during winter. Tia hadn't seen her since Christmas, but she could still recall Grandma Nina's gruff voice over the phone. "You're always welcome here, kid. Always." She had never been turned away. Not like this. Fumbling with her phone, Tia scrolled to her grandmother's number with numb fingers. The phone rang once, twice, then clicked. "Tia?" Grandma Nina's warm voice crackled through, edged with surprise. "It's late. What's going on, Grandma?" Tia's voice trembled as she finally broke down. "I need to come stay with you. Can I come right now?" There was a pause, a soft rustle on the other end. Perhaps Grandma Nina shifting in her old recliner. "What's happened, honey? You sound really upset." "I'll explain when I get there," Tia managed, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "Please, can I come?" "Of course you can," Grandma Nina replied firmly and without fuss. "Just get here safe. I'll have the kettle on." Tia hung up, clinging to the promise of shelter, just enough to move. She looked back at the house one last time, the warm light spilling from the windows, the silhouette of her mom still at the table, then turned toward the bus stop at the end of the street, the winter wind howling behind her. Tia got off the Greyhound bus in Oakwood just after midnight, her sneakers crunching on the frosty pavement of the station lot. The 2-hour ride had blurred by amid headlights and half-formed regrets, her bag weighing heavily on her lap. She trudged the few blocks to Nina's street, the cold biting harder with every step, until the little brick house came into view. Its sagging porch was lit by a single yellow light, and the garden was a tangle of winter roses peeking through the snow. The front door swung open before she could knock, and there stood Grandma Nina, bundled in a faded quilted robe, her silver hair tied up loosely. Nina's sharp gray eyes quickly took in Tia's tear-streaked face, the dark circles under her eyes, the slump of her shoulders as if she carried the world. Without a word, Nina stepped forward and pulled Tia into a warm, sturdy hug. "Come on in, dear," she said in a rough but gentle tone. "There's always a place for you here, you know that." Tia nodded against her grandmother's shoulder, the lump in her throat too big for words. Nina didn't press for answers. She simply ushered her inside, closing the creaking door behind them. The house smelled of old wood and chamomile tea, with a hint of cinnamon lingering from the oven. It was small and filled with decades of memories. A sagging plaid couch, a shelf of chipped teacups, a radio softly playing late-night jazz. Nina guided Tia into the living room. "Sit down, warm up. I'll fix us something hot," she said. Tia sank into the worn couch, its springs creaking beneath her, clutching her duffel bag like a lifeline. Moments later, Nina returned with 2 mugs of tea and a plate of leftover meatloaf sandwiches with crusty bread and a smear of ketchup, the kind of comfort food Tia hadn't realized she missed. They ate in silence at first, the clink of forks on plates the only sound, as the weight of everything, the fight, the fear, the uncertain future, pressed down on Tia until her resolve began to crumble. "Grandma," Tia began, setting her mug down with a trembling clatter. "I've really messed up everything." The words tumbled out in a rush. "Mom and Dad kicked me out. Mom said I've brought shame on them, that I'm no longer their daughter, and I'm pregnant. I don't know what to do. I'm terrified." Nina slowly set her own mug aside, her weathered hand resting on the arm of the chair. She sighed deeply, a long, heavy sigh that carried years of her own struggles, then leaned forward, and fixed Tia with a steady look. "Oh, sweetheart," Nina said, reaching out to pat Tia's shoulder gently. "People say a lot of hurtful things when they're upset. But listen, having a child is not a disgrace. It's a blessing, even when things are really tough." "They don't see it that way," Tia replied, her voice cracking as she gripped the edge of the table. "Dad told me to get out like I was a stranger, and Ryan, he's gone. How am I supposed to handle this all by myself?" "You're not alone," Nina said firmly, cutting through the swirl of Tia's despair. "You've got me. I raised your dad through worse than this, and I'll help you get through it too. We'll manage together." "But what if I can't?" Tia whispered, her voice trembling with doubt. Nina chuckled softly, a low, rough sound, and squeezed her shoulder. "Come on now, you left that house and made it here. That takes more guts than most, even people twice your age. You'll figure it out, one step at a time. Now, finish that sandwich before it gets cold." Tia managed a tearful smile, the first bit of light after so much darkness. She picked up the sandwich, feeling the warmth of the bread seep into her fingers, and took a bite. Nina relaxed back in her chair, sipping her tea as soft jazz played in the background. For the first time in weeks, Tia felt a small spark of hope warming her heart. In Nina's little brick house, the chill of rejection, the pain of losing Ryan, and the bitter bite of that cold January night all began to ease under her grandmother's steady care. Nina wasn't just giving her a roof, she was giving her a lifeline, a foothold to start over. For the next month, Tia settled in at Nina's. She helped tend the winter roses in the garden, snuggled on the plaid couch with cups of chamomile, tea, and let the quiet hum of the old radio mend her broken edges. It wasn't easy, her body was changing and her fears grew daily, but Nina's no-nonsense support kept her grounded. "We always manage, kiddo," Nina assured her. Then, one humid Tuesday morning in mid-August, while Tia was washing dishes in Nina's cramped kitchen, her water broke. "Grandma!" she gasped, clutching the sink as water dripped onto the linoleum. Nina was there in an instant, tossing a dish towel aside and grabbing the high car keys. "Let's go, sweetheart. It's time to meet your little one." They hurried to Oakwood Mercy, a small maternity hospital just off the highway, its beige walls and buzzing fluorescent lights blurring into one as Tia gripped Nina's arm through the waves of pain. Nina stayed by her side through every moment, from the paperwork and sterile gown to the long, exhausting contractions that left Tia breathless and muttering under her breath. "You're doing fine, dear," Nina murmured steadily, dabbing Tia's forehead with a cool cloth. "Just keep breathing. He's almost here." Finally, after one more powerful push that brought a cry from Tia's lips, a tiny baby boy was born, slick, crying, with a mop of dark, fluffy hair shining under the hospital lights. The nurse placed him on Tia's chest, and time seemed to pause. Tia stared down at the little one, his scrunched-up face, his tiny fists, and her heart burst with a joy so intense it took her breath away. She cradled him close, her arms trembling as if afraid to let go of the miracle. His skin was warm against hers, his little chest rising and falling like a promise. "You're my joy," she whispered, her voice thick with tears as she brushed a finger over his tiny hand that clutched hers with surprising strength. "My little secret," Nina said with a rare, wide grin, her voice husky with pride. "Look at that. A fighter, just like his mama." "Mama, look at his hair." Tia managed a shaky laugh, glancing at Nina. "He's perfect, isn't he? Perfect just as he is." Nina agreed, patting Tia's shoulder. "You did really well, kid. I'm proud of you." The hospital room filled with soft beeps, gentle whimpers, and the distant murmur of nurses. Tia traced the curve of his cheek, memorizing every detail, the flutter of his lashes, the way his lips pursed as if dreaming. She had been terrified of this moment, terrified of failing him, of the future. But now, holding him, she felt a new strength growing inside her. Not just fear, but a determination to fight. For him, for both of them. "Is he hungry?" Nina asked, noticing how the baby nuzzled closer to Tia's chest. "Maybe," Tia replied, shifting him gently, still amazed at how delicate he felt. "I guess we'll figure it out together, right, little guy?" Nina chuckled and pulled a chair closer. "That's the spirit. You two will be just fine. I have a good feeling about it." Tia smiled, exhaustion tugging at her, yet the weight of her baby in her arms kept her grounded. For the first time since that cold night on the porch, she believed things might really turn around. Years passed in Nina's little brick house, each one weaving Tia and her son closer into its warm, familiar fabric. Her son grew from a noisy little bundle into a bright, energetic boy, his dark, fluffy hair now a tousled mop that caught the sunlight. By the time he was 5, he was a whirlwind of questions. Why do birds sing? How do clouds float? His curiosity was as vast as the oakwood sky. Tia and Nina took turns answering his endless queries, amazed at how quickly his mind worked. One sticky summer evening, as crickets chirped and the air smelled of honeysuckle, his questions turned more serious. They were sitting on the porch, the old wooden steps creaking under their weight. Nina rocked in her favorite chair, knitting a lumpy blue scarf for her latest project, while her son sat on the steps with a half-melted popsicle dripping orange onto his fingers. The sun was setting, bathing the garden in warm shades of gold and pink. He had been quiet for a while, unusual for him, until he looked up at Nina with big, serious hazel eyes and asked, "Grandma, why do all the kids at school have both a grandpa and a grandma, and I've never seen mine?" "Mom says you're my great-grandma," he added, confused. "What does that mean?" Nina's knitting needles paused, the yarn tangling in her lap. She had known this day would come. Children always sensed when something was missing, but the question still caught her off guard. Setting the scarf aside, she folded her hands and said, "It's not a simple answer, sweetheart. It's a bit of a grown-up mess and you're still little. But I'll try. Sometimes adults make big mistakes. Your grandpa and grandma, my son and his wife, they got scared a long time ago when your mom found out she was pregnant. They couldn't see how amazing you would be and worried more about what people would say than about how much your mom wanted you." His little face crumpled with confusion and hurt. "No, that's not true," Nina quickly reassured him, cupping his cheek. "They just didn't know how to handle their feelings. People can be slow to learn, and sometimes they miss the best parts until it's too late. But your mom chose love from the start. She chose you, and that's what really matters." He stared at her for a moment, then looked out at the garden as the last rays of sunlight glimmered off the marigolds, a gentle breeze stirring the leaves and carrying the soft buzz of a lawnmower. "But you're always here, right?" he finally said, hope flickering in his eyes. "Always, my dear," Nina replied with a warm smile, ruffling his hair. "Family isn't just about who you're born to. It's about who sticks with you, who loves you no matter what. And I'm not going anywhere." He grinned a toothy, gap-toothed smile that chased away the shadows. "Good," he said, fiddling with his popsicle stick. "I like it better when you're around." Later that day, Tia found herself at the kitchen sink, her hands deep in soapy water as she scrubbed a pot that really didn't need cleaning. The sound of her son's voice and Nina's gentle responses drifted in from the porch on the warm August breeze. She caught the end of a conversation about, "They didn't want me," and her heart tightened as the sponge slipped from her fingers and fell into the suds. Tears welled up quickly, streaming down her cheeks before she could stop them. She pressed a damp hand to her mouth, stifling a sob, while the old wound of her parents' rejection reopened. But Nina's calm, kind voice worked like a soothing balm through the pain, softening everything, bit by bit. "Mom," her son piped up from the doorway, snapping her out of her thoughts. He came in barefoot, still clutching his popsicle stick, like it was precious. "Are you okay? Your eyes are all red." Tia swiped at her face with a dish towel and forced a smile. I'm fine, buddy. Just got some soap in my eyes. It stings something fierce. She turned back to the sink to rinse the pot for the third time. How's Grandma's scarf coming along? He asked with genuine curiosity. It's lumpy, she replied with a little giggle. I think it looks funny. Kinda like Grandma, don't you think? Tia laughed, her chuckle shaky but sincere. Looking out the window, she saw Nina rocking in her chair with her knitting needles clicking, and felt a rush of gratitude. Her son didn't push for more details. He was busy chattering about a beetle he had seen in the garden. She let his innocent words anchor her back to the present. As the years went by, each one adding its own challenges, her son grew into a lanky boy with unruly hair and a mind that buzzed with energy every day. By second grade, school had become his playground. He would linger after class, bombarding his teacher, Ms. Daniels, with questions like, "Why do leaves turn red?" or "How do magnets stick?" Science captivated him, whether it was biology, physics, or any puzzle he could solve. He'd come home with library books, their pages dog-eared and smudged, and spend hours drawing circuit diagrams or sketching bug wings. He's got a real gift, Ms. Daniels told Tia at a parent-teacher night, her glasses glinting under the school lights. He finds these clever solutions that make you wonder why you didn't see things differently. And the way he explains things, half the class gets it because of him. Tia beamed, clutching a styrofoam cup of lukewarm coffee. He's always been like that, figuring things out, even if it drives me crazy sometimes. Hold on to that, Ms. Daniels said with a chuckle. Kids like him are going places. And at home, her son proved it every day. One rainy afternoon, he sat cross-legged at the kitchen table with a disassembled flashlight spread out before him. Batteries, a bulb, bits of wire. "Look, Mom," he called, holding up the glowing contraption. Timmy didn't understand how it worked, so I explained that it's just electrons moving around. Simple, right? Tia leaned over and ruffled his hair. Simple for you, maybe. I'd have shocked myself silly. You're going to teach me something one day, huh? Only if you stop burning the toast, he teased with a gap-toothed grin. Tia swatted him playfully with a dish towel, watching him grow. His sharp mind, his quiet confidence. Though the ache from her parents' absence still lingered like an old bruise, her son was living proof that love could build something stronger than fear. Tia eventually carved out a steady life in Oakwood. It wasn't glamorous, but it held together. For years she worked at Betty's Diner, a small, cozy spot on the edge of town with cracked vinyl booths and an old jukebox that hadn't worked since the 90s. She started there right after, moving in with Nina, a job to keep the lights on while she napped in the back office, cradled in a hand-me-down car seat. Dreams of earning a degree, maybe in nursing or teaching, danced in her head some nights, but those dreams were set aside. Every shift, every tip, every extra hour she worked, she saved away in a coffee can under her bed labeled Noah's Future in marker, whether it was pennies, crumpled fives, whatever she could spare. It was all for him, for college, for a chance she never had. But life, as it often does, had other plans. One muggy Thursday in late spring, Tia hadn't slept well the night before and slogged through her shift at the diner, the fluorescent buzz drilling in her ears. Her apron sagged with the weight of a coffee pot, and her sneakers squeaked on the linoleum as she refilled cups. While topping off a trucker's mug, a wave of dizziness hit. Whether from fatigue or the heat, she couldn't tell, and her foot caught on a chair leg. The pot tipped, hot coffee splashing in a dark, steaming arc over a table, soaking papers, a phone, and the lap of a well-dressed man in a sharp navy suit that looked like it cost a fortune. Not something you'd pick up at a discount store. "Oh my goodness," Tia gasped, as the pot clattered and she grabbed napkins from her apron, frantically dabbing at the mess. "I'm so sorry, sir. I really didn't mean to," she stammered, face burning red. The man brushed off the coffee from his sleeve, his jaw set and expression calm. He was in his 40s, with defined cheekbones, and hints of gray in his dark hair. Tia braced herself for a scolding, but he simply stared silently as she babbled. "I can ask my boss for the rest of the day off. There's a dry cleaner just 2 blocks away. I'll run over and fix it myself," she offered. He raised a hand to stop her, his cool blue eyes piercing. "Dry cleaning is fine," he said in a clipped tone, "but I have a meeting in an hour. If you want to fix this, bring me something to wear until my suit is ready." Tia blinked in panic. "Something to wear? I understand. Give me 20 minutes, please." She dashed to the kitchen, dodging a busboy, and pleaded with Betty, the diner manager, for a quick break. "It's an emergency. I'll be right back, I promise." Betty, a wiry woman with a rough voice, simply grunted and waved her off. Tia sprinted the few blocks home, sweat clinging to her back, and burst into Nina's house. Her son was at school, and Nina was napping. Perfect timing. Tia rummaged through the closet, pushing past moth-eaten coats until she found it. Grandpa Earl's old corduroy jacket, a relic from the 70s, brown and patched at the elbows, with a faint scent of pipe tobacco. It was just what she needed. Panting as she returned to the diner, she handed the jacket to the suited man. "Here. It's not fancy, but it's clean," she said. He examined the faded fabric and frayed cuffs, then unexpectedly burst into hearty laughter that echoed through the quiet diner. Tia froze for a moment, then managed a nervous grin. "It's, vintage," she said. "Vintage," he repeated, still chuckling as he shrugged it on. The jacket hung loosely on him, clashing with his polished slacks, but he accepted it with good humor. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," he said, wiping his hands on his apron. "I'm really sorry about the suit." Ryan waved it off, adjusting the jacket. "I have a meeting soon. We'll settle up afterward." He grabbed his soggy briefcase and moved to a booth in the back, where Betty joined him. Tia's jaw dropped as she listened to snippets of conversation about prime location development deals and the possibility of the diner being sold. Betty filled her in quietly, lighting a cigarette out back. "That guy's a real shark. He's been circling this place for months, planning to bulldoze it for a strip mall or condos." Tia's stomach sank. The diner wasn't just a job. It was her lifeline, her savings that she'd painstakingly built over the years. If he bought it out, all those years of saving might vanish in an instant. The next afternoon, Tia stood at the corner of Main and Elm, clutching the dry-cleaned suit in a plastic bag. The sun blazed down, glinting off Oakwood's sleepy storefronts, but her nerves buzzed like live wires. She was furious, really mad, at the slick land grab scheme and the threat to the diner that had been her rock for over a decade. When the suited man arrived again, this time in a gray outfit, no trace of corduroy, she thrust the bag at him, her jaw set. "Thanks for this, Ryan," she said. He accepted it with a nod and asked, "How much do I owe you for the cleaning?" Tia scowled. "Keep your money." "I don't want it." He paused, raising his eyebrows as he assessed her tone. "Hey, are you all right? You look like you're ready to hit me. Why do you care?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You're just another slick investor, right? Coming in, not caring about ordinary folks who depend on places like this to survive." Ryan went quiet, his easy charm faltering for a moment. He simply looked at her, his blue eyes unreadable, then tipped his head slightly and turned on his heel. "All right, fair enough," he muttered, walking away with the bag swinging by his side. Tia watched him leave, her anger simmering into a dull ache. She figured that was that, another man proving her instincts right. But the next morning, at Betty's diner, something felt off. She pushed through the door, apron half-tied, and froze as everyone, from the cooks and waitresses to the old guy serving coffee, stared at her, grinning as if they'd just won the lottery. "What's with all these smiles?" she demanded, hands on her hips. Betty rushed out of the kitchen, her gravelly voice softening into a huge, toothy grin. "You're a miracle worker, Tia. That Ryan guy called last night. He said he's dropping his land deal. He won't touch the diner unless you agree to dinner with him. Tia's jaw dropped. Dinner with him? Her mind whirled. 15 years without dating, no flings since Ryan, nothing after him. She had shut that door and tossed away the key. Men were trouble. She had learned the hard way. Her life was complicated. The diner was everything, and now this suited stranger was trying to dangle her future in front of her. It all stank of a setup. "This is crazy," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "What's his angle?" "I don't know," Betty shrugged. "But the diner's safe for now. You're the real deal, kid." Tia spent the rest of the day stewing over it, the clatter of plates and chatter of customers providing a fuzzy background. By evening, curiosity and a nagging "what if" won over her caution. "All right, one dinner," she told Ryan in a clipped voice. "But it's at the diner, my turf, tomorrow at 6 sharp. Deal?" "Deal," he replied with a smile. "See? You then." That very night, the diner was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the sizzle of the grill. Tia picked a booth in the corner, still in her work jeans and a faded green t-shirt, keeping things simple and no nonsense. Ryan arrived on time, now in slacks and a button-up shirt with no tie. He sat down across from her, and Tia wasted no time. "Before you get any ideas," she said firmly, elbows resting on the table, "I have a son I'm raising on my own, and I take care of my grandma too. If you're looking for a fling or a woman with no commitments, that's not me. And if this is just a short-term thing, tell me now. I don't play games." Ryan leaned back with a slow, genuine smile. He was in his 40s, with lines around his eyes that told stories of experience. "Well, I've never been turned down so neatly before," he said with a soft chuckle. "Most women scramble for any bit of charm or money, but you're different, Tia." She narrowed her eyes. "I'm not sure if you're teasing me," she replied. "Yeah, well, I know what I want. So tell me, why me?" Ryan sipped. The black coffee she poured, setting the cup down with a clear clink. "Honestly, you really surprised me with that jacket stunt yesterday. No one has ever spoken to me like that in years. I'm not here to disrupt your life. I just want to get to know you." Tia studied him, looking for any hidden motives. The diner's fluorescent lights caught the silver in his hair and a faint scar on his knuckle. He didn't flinch under her gaze. "Okay," she finally said, leaning back. "But let's keep it simple. Burger, fries, and nothing more." "Simple it is," Ryan agreed, raising his cup in a small toast. Soon Betty brought over their plates of greasy burgers and crispy fries, and they ate as the tension slowly gave way to a more relaxed conversation. Tia wasn't ready to fully trust him yet, but the familiar hum of the diner and Ryan's easy laughter chipped away at her defenses. Over the following months, that very first dinner turned out to be just the start. Ryan kept coming by, first once a week, then twice, with small, thoughtful gestures. A bouquet of daisies from the local market, tickets to an afternoon show at the old theater downtown, even a suggestion to watch the county fair's fireworks. Tia's walls, built high after so many years of hurt, began to crack. She found herself smiling at his dry jokes and lingering over their coffee a little. Longer than she planned, though trust still remained tangled. Ryan was like a puzzle, too polished and persistent, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. One clear October evening, as leaves crunched beneath their feet, Ryan threw her a real curveball. They were finishing their burgers at Betty's Diner, while an old Patsy Cline tune played from the jukebox. He set his fork down and looked straight at her. "Tia," he said calmly, "I'd really like to meet your son and your grandma too, if that's all right." Tia froze, ketchup smudging her fingers. "Meet them?" she repeated, her mind racing. "Why?" Ryan simply shrugged with a small smile. "Because they're the people who matter to you. I've been around for months now, and it feels right to know who is important in your life." His words broke through years of keeping people at arm's length. Tia hesitated, then mumbled, "All right, half expecting regret. The meeting happened that Saturday at Nina's house. Tia spent the morning fussing, vacuuming the sagging couch, wiping down the counters repeatedly, with her stomach in knots. Ryan arrived at 3 o'clock, this time dressed casually in jeans and a flannel shirt, and even brought a paper bag of fresh apples from a roadside stand. "Thought these might go well with dinner," he said, handing them to her with a friendly grin. Nina instantly took a liking to him, ushering him into the living room where her cozy quilted robe swished as she started rambling about how Tia had always been such a good girl, strong, raising her son on her own without complaint, working hard at the diner. "Grandma, cut it out!" Tia interjected from the doorway, cheeks flushed. Ryan chuckled, nodding at Nina. "I already know the story," he said. Nina beamed, patting his arm. "That's wonderful. You really hold on to your strength." Just then, the front door burst open, and Tia's son ran in with his backpack swinging and sneakers caked in playground dirt. "Mom, I'm home. We dissected a worm today. It was so gross," he exclaimed, then stopped short and eyed Ryan. "Who's this?" Tia braced herself, but Ryan leaned forward and said, "Hi, I'm Ryan. Can you tell me, how do worms move?" "Without legs? It's been a while since I read a science book." Her son's face lit up, his shyness melting away. "They have these tiny bristles and muscles that squeeze them along like a little conveyor belt." He then excitedly dashed off to grab a shoebox filled with his treasures, circuit parts, a magnifying glass, a worn-out bug guide, and spent the next 40 minutes chattering non-stop, showing Ryan a battery-powered fan he had rigged and a hand-drawn star chart. Ryan listened intently, asking, "What does this wire do? How did you figure that out?" His smile grew with every answer. Tia watched from the doorway, arms crossed, surprised by how naturally they connected. Nina came over, peeling apples for a pie, her quiet smile saying everything without words. "Why are you grinning like that?" Tia whispered. Nina replied softly, "Just thinking that after everything you've been through, losing Ryan, your parents scraping by, a man like him doesn't come along every day." Tia frowned, glancing back at Ryan, who was laughing as her son waved a bent paperclip. "I still don't understand why he's here or what he really wants sometimes," she said. Nina shook her head, dropping apple slices into a bowl. "It's not about what he wants. It's about what you've earned. Just give it a chance, okay?" Tia said nothing, her eyes fixed on Ryan and her son, who were bent over a tangle of wires, their voices filling the room with warmth. A warmth Tia hadn't felt in years. She wondered if maybe her defenses were keeping out more than just pain. 6 months later, as spring burst into bloom across Oakwood, Ryan surprised Tia once again. They were sitting on Nina's porch, where the air was sweet with lilacs, and Ryan was quietly fiddling with a robotics kit. He had been more subdued than usual, fidgeting with his coffee mug until he set it down and took Tia's hand. Her heart pounded. She recognized that look, the one that meant he was about to change everything. "Tia," he said in a soft but confident voice, "I want to marry you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. What do you say?" Tia stared at him, the words bouncing around in her head. Marriage, a diner girl with a coffee can dream and a son. Ryan was like a whirlwind, steady, kind, a man who could laugh at her rough edges and stick around no matter what. Sometimes, lying in bed beside him, she'd pinch herself, half convinced he was just a dream. But there he was, as real as the calluses on his hands, his blue eyes searching hers. "Are you serious?" she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Absolutely serious," he replied, squeezing her hand. "You practically said yes, even if you're hesitating a bit." And then, as if that wasn't enough, he added something that sealed the deal. They had talked about her job at the diner before. Ryan had even suggested she quit and join his real estate firm to handle administrative work, saying, "You'd be amazing at it." But Tia was firm. "I love Betty's. It's my lifeline. And I'm building a college fund for Noah. Ryan didn't push. He just let it be. A week after his proposal, he showed up at her house carrying a thick envelope and a grin that wouldn't fade. Nina was in the kitchen, peeling carrots for stew, and Noah was sprawled on the rug, doodling gears. Ryan placed the envelope on the table. "Go ahead, open it," he urged. Tia frowned, pulling out a stack of papers. Her eyes caught the letterhead, Carson University School of Medicine, and the words, "Dr. Carter, full tuition scholarship for the pre-med program." Her breath hitched. What? What is this? Ryan's eyes met hers, still smiling broadly. "They're covering 4 full years of medical school. You start in about 9 years when Noah is ready." "Stop laughing," she snapped, tears welling in her eyes. "Ryan, how did you—" She bolted to her room, grabbed the savings jar labeled Noah's Future, and dumped its contents on the table. "Take it. You paid for this, not me." Ryan's smile softened, his laugh quieting. "That money is yours, Tia. I did this because I wanted to help, not for any refund." Tia looked first at the cash, then at him, her chest heaving. Noah piped up, "Does this mean I'm going to be a doctor?" And Nina burst into laughter, clapping her hands. The room spun with voices, but Tia's mind was already racing ahead. Days later, Tia decided to act. She pulled every saved penny from 15 years of diner tips and ordered a custom jacket from a local tailor. It was a stunning deep navy wool jacket, cut sharply like Ryan's suits, but with a corduroy collar, a nod to that chaotic day-long. Ago. She wrapped it in a sleek black box tied with a silver ribbon and waited for the right moment. That moment came one quiet evening, just the two of them at Betty's after closing time. The diner was dark except for one light over their booth. Tia slid the box across the table, her hands shaking as she opened it. Ryan raised an eyebrow, carefully untying the ribbon. When he lifted the jacket, his grin softened into something tender. "Tia, this is for you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For being here for me, for everything. I was so scared to let anyone in, but you're real. Thank you." He ran his hand over the collar, then looked at her with bright eyes. "So that means you're saying yes?" She laughed through tears. "Yes, Ryan. It means yes." He pulled her into a warm hug, the jacket pressed between them. And for once, Tia allowed herself to bask in the warmth filling her heart. It wasn't a dream. It was her reality. Ryan went through his years at Carson University like he was born for it. Science wasn't just a subject to him. It was his passion, the spark he'd had since he was a kid taking apart flashlights. He aced his exams with ease, his curiosity lighting up every lecture and lab. When he graduated at the top of his class, a private clinic in Baltimore snapped him up before his diploma was even signed. At 22, he became a surgeon, steady, hands guiding a scalpel in operating rooms where life and death hung in the balance. It was late November that year, during Thanksgiving week, when Tia called Ryan home to Oakwood. She had cooked a feast, turkey with sage stuffing, mashed potatoes drowning in gravy, and tangy cranberry sauce spread out on Nina's worn dining table. Ryan pulled into the driveway of the old brick house, glowing warmly against the gray dusk, and stepped into a scene that felt like a long-awaited hug. Tia, now in her early 40s with streaks of silver in her hair but still sporting a fierce smile, bustled in her plaid apron. Ryan carved the turkey with practiced precision. His real estate firm was booming. He had just landed a deal for a downtown office block. Tia had long since hung up her waitress apron. She and Ryan had bought Betty's diner when Betty retired at 75, too tired to keep up with the pace. Now Tia managed it like a queen. The diner was theirs to keep alive. Nina, now 90 and still sharp, sat at the head of the table, in a cozy sweater, recounting stories, half true, half exaggerated, about Tia's stubbornness as a teenager. Meanwhile, Noah giggled as he nibbled on a roll. The room buzzed with conversation, the clink of plates, the crackle of the fireplace. "Business is good," Ryan remarked, passing the gravy. "But this right here, this moment, is even better." "Absolutely," Tia agreed, her voice light as Noah nudged her playfully. Dr. Carter, who had become like family, walked by with a fruitcake. "Hope it's better than mine," he joked, before his phone buzzed with an emergency call from the clinic. He sighed. "I'm on my way," and left quickly, apologizing. "Save me some pie always," Tia said, squeezing his arm as he grabbed his coat. The surgery had been grueling. 6 long hours on a woman in her late 60s with a ruptured appendix. Dr. Carter had pulled it off with his usual calm, and the patient had come through, groggy but alive. Later, as he scrubbed out in his green scrubs, a man in a tweed coat approached him with a lingering handshake. "Dr. Carter, thank you," the man said, his voice thick with gratitude. "You saved her life. I can't thank you enough." "Just doing my job," Dr. Carter replied as he peeled off his gloves, ready to head to the break room. But the man lingered, his eyes scanning little Noah as if he were studying him. "You're young for a surgeon," the man remarked casually. "Where? Did you grow up? Oakwood? Are your parents still there?" Dr. Carter frowned and tossed his gloves into the bin. "Yes, my mom's still here." The man smiled oddly. "I'm just curious. Good stock, I bet. Raising a kid like you. What's your mom's name?" Tia replied warily. "Now I'm glad your wife's okay, but I'd like to meet her, the woman who raised such a brilliant surgeon. I really need to thank her." Noah blinked in confusion, as if patients sometimes got too mushy. "Sure," he said slowly. "But that's not usually how we do things. She's busy." The man's tone softened as he stepped closer, briefly hugging Noah before pulling back and gripping his shoulder. "I'd love to meet her. Please, just once." Dr. Carter rubbed his temple, his patience thinning. "All right, fine, but make it quick," he finally agreed. His relief was palpable, though he couldn't quite shake a feeling of unease about the man. A few weeks later, in December, a warm day melted the frost off Oakwood's lawns. Dr. Carter drove up to his childhood home, the same brick house now fresh with a new coat of paint and a porch swing built by Ryan. He had been calling Tia Dad since their wedding, a quiet shift that felt right. Tia answered his call with excitement. "They want to meet us!" she exclaimed, practically bouncing as she headed out the door. Halfway there, Ryan stepped onto the porch, waving, while her grandparents, George and Linda, emerged from an old pickup. Tia ran out the front, her apron still dusted with flour from baking cookies, a welcome treat, her face lighting up with a bright smile. Noah hopped off the truck, kissing Tia's cheek. "I can't wait to meet you," he said. But when Tia saw her father in a tweed jacket and her mother in a faded cardigan, she stopped dead, her smile replaced by shock. Noah immediately ran to her side. "Grandma, are you okay?" he asked softly. Her father's voice broke as he said, "Tia, I'm so sorry. I missed you every single day. We were foolish, terrified, and I want to make things right." Tia stood silently, tears streaming down her face, her hands clenched tightly. Ryan moved closer protectively, but Tia waved him off, her eyes locked on her father. "Meet your grandparents," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The atmosphere turned heavy as Linda burst into sobs, while George stood there, shaking and crying. Dr. Carter's mind reeled at the sight of grandparents. Before he could speak, George stepped forward, voice trembling. "Tia, I'm so sorry. We were wrong. We didn't know how to fix things." Linda's voice was small as she said, "We were always so worried about you, but we never did enough. Never called, never visited, never sent even a dime for Noah." Nina scoffed, leaning on her cane. "You left her to me, and yet she built a life, a good one. She raised a son who saves lives and married a man who would walk through fire for her. This family is hers, and you have no place here until you own up to your mistakes. George's face crumpled again, tears flowing. We were wrong, Mom. I know it. We just didn't know how to fix it. Linda nodded, softly sobbing. We're so sorry, Tia. We don't deserve your forgiveness. But we're here now. Tia sat stiffly, staring at the steam rising from her untouched cup of tea, with Noah's small hand resting on her shoulder as Ryan looked on, waiting for her to speak. The room held its breath as Nina's words hung in the air like a final judgment. Finally, Tia looked up, her eyes wet yet determined. Sorry is a start, she said quietly, but it's not enough, not yet. George nodded, swallowing hard, and Linda clutched his arm. They all felt diminished in the face of the family they had lost. Nina leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply, and Ryan picked up his book again, his soft voice resuming. You never really understand someone until you see things from their side. The fire crackled, and the tea went cold as the first fragile thread of forgiveness, perhaps just time, hung silently between them.